Let's get rolling on a Wednesday. Glasses in session. Go to the Glasser guest line. Check in with Chad Bishop, who joins us. Give Chad a follow on X at Mr. Chad Bishop, Georgia Tech beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Kind enough to join us here on Send It In. And Chad, we were talking before, man, a lot of excitement around this Georgia Tech team going into year 4 under Brent Key already. What's Georgia Tech have to do to kind of take that next step now that they're probably not going to take anybody for granted to be one of those contenders in the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, even Brent Key has said it recently. It's time for Georgia Tech to take that jump. You know, they've been a 7-6 team the past 2 seasons, 5-7 before that. They've kind of been hovering in that 500 range. Made some national headlines with wins over Florida State and Miami and playing Georgia 8 overtimes. But it's been sort of those middle-of-the-road games, right? Those 50-50 games that Georgia Tech hasn't been able to consistently win. So that's the next step, right? Like, they're going to get up for Clemson. They're going to get up for Colorado on the road to open the year. They're going to get up for Georgia. You know, can they go on the road in November and beat Boston College? Can they go win at Duke? Can they beat Syracuse at home? It's some of these, you know, I like to call them 50-50 games because of the evenly matched teams. Like, can they win those time and time again? Can they put together a winning streak in the middle of the season to get to 9 wins, 10 wins, and sniff an ACC title game? To me, that's what it comes down to. It sounds broad and kind of generic, right? But it's sort of a mindset thing with this team because they've increased their talent and depth across the board. So they should be able to compete with anybody they play.
You watch Haynes King at quarterback, Chad, and anybody who watches him play, you just kind of fall in love with them because of how tough he is, how hard-nosed he is. You think of that game against Georgia and how he just left it all out there. I think the big question for Haynes King is if he's developed as a passer this season. What's that going to look like? Do they believe that he has going into his senior year?
Yeah, no doubt. You know, part of that was in 24 was dealing with that shoulder injury, got hurt in the game at North Carolina and missed a couple games and came back at the end of the year, but it was never really truly 100%. So, you know, he told me at ACC football kickoff, a lot of his offseason work was getting his body in shape and prepared to sort of take some of those blows when he runs the ball to really guard against some of those injuries to his shoulder and to his upper body so he could throw the ball better. I mean, he wants to play in the NFL. I mean, he told me that, like, that's his dream, and why wouldn't it be, right? So he knows he's got to develop as a passer, and as good as he was in 24 and as good as he's been through his career, he needs to take his game to the next level. He's got a bevy of wide receivers this year to throw the ball around to all over the yard. A bunch of, you know, some tall guys, some short guys, some really fast guys, some slot guys. So he has no shortage of weapons to do that as well. So if he's going to have a breakout year passing, this could certainly be the season for Haynes King.
Who are some of those wide receivers that you think can emerge? Because King's back, the running back Haynes is back as well. They do lose some guys in the receiver room, but as you said, they're happy with some of the people that they brought in. Who are some guys we should keep an eye on?
Sorry, guys. I think I lost you. I think I got a bad connection.
All good, Chad. Yeah, I think we got you now. Yeah, go ahead. Receiving room for Georgia Tech. Anybody that you like this year there?
There we go. Sorry, you said the wide receiver room, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So first of all, you start with Malik Rutherford, one of the veterans on the offense, has been around for a long time. Actually hopped in the transfer portal in December, hopped back to Georgia Tech, and he's going to be one of the leaders for that group. You know, he's going to be sort of the security blanket for this offense when it comes to the passing game. But outside of him, there's Eric Rivers, who came in from Florida International, Dean Patterson from Florida International, a tandem there to watch. Isaiah Cannon and Bailey Stockton, 2 young guys who Georgia Tech really, really, really likes, who can make some big plays. I really like Isaiah Cannon, his height, his physicality, and what he can do in the receiving game. So, again, they have lots of options in that passing game, whereas the past couple of years it may have been one guy, it may have been 2 guys. So this year there's just a lot more options for this Georgia Tech offense to throw the ball around to, and that includes some tight ends, right? Brett Seither's back off of his injury. Harperine is back as a young kid, and they brought in a kid from Cal and J.T. Byrne to help in that passing game as well. So, again, lots of options, and don't count out Jamal Haynes out of the backfield to catch some balls as well.
We're talking Georgia Tech here with Chad Bishop, kind enough to join us on Send It In. Chad, what about the defensive side of the ball for Georgia Tech? They have a new defensive coordinator that's coming over. What have been the early impressions of Blake Gideon so far?
Yeah, to me, that's the biggest question mark. I don't doubt that Georgia Tech's defense will be good, but how good? Can they be dominant? Can they lift this team to that next level like we talked about earlier? Blake Gideon came from Texas. He's never been a defensive coordinator before. That doesn't discount him, but it's an unknown, right? And then along the defensive front, they brought in a ton of transfers to help the pass rush, to help get some turnovers and some quarterback pressures. So that's an unknown. A linebacker crew is very, very strong with Kyle Eford leading the way and E.J. Lightsey right next to him. That's going to be a strength of this team. But then the same thing with the secondary. A lot of transfers coming in, a lot of youth. Again, I don't doubt their talent, but how much, will they be able to dominate the opposition? So there's a lot of question marks over there. Can this team come together sooner rather than later and make some big-time plays for Blake Gideon, or will there be sort of struggles early on, and will that dictate how the rest of the season goes?
Looking at the schedule, Chad, we have so many great week 1 matchups. We have those 3 top 10 matchups, which everybody is locked into. But there are some under-the-radar games that I'm really excited for. And one of those games is Georgia Tech at Colorado to kick off the season. Obviously, Deion's trying to replace Shedeur and Travis Hunter. Georgia Tech has a lot of expectations. That's going to be a Friday night game in Boulder. Going to be a great atmosphere. What do you expect out of that game? What are your early thoughts on Georgia Tech at Colorado?
I think why a lot of folks are really high on Georgia Tech has to do with continuity. Brent Key going into year, 3.5, if you count his interim stint. Buster Faulkner's been there. Chris Winke's been there. Offensive line coach Jeep Way. We've talked about Haynes King, his third year as a starter. Jamal Haynes is a veteran running back. Malik Rutherford is a veteran wide receiver. You know what you're getting with Georgia Tech. Brent Key said as much. Like this, there's no secrets with this team. In Colorado, there's lots of question marks, right? Like who's going to take over at quarterback? Who are some of these transfers that they brought in going to step up into major roles and perform at a really, really high level? So I think to me, that's what gives Georgia Tech the edge, at least on paper, right? Is like they have a veteran team with veteran coaches who have been together for quite some time. And there's a little bit of unknown with Colorado. Now, that being said, going out to Boulder, a sellout crowd, all eyeballs always on Deion Sanders and Coach Prime and the atmosphere that those guys bring. It's going to be tough. I look back at last year when Georgia Tech went out to Dublin. Probably not a lot of folks thought they could knock off Florida State, who was top 10 at the time. And the way they handled that trip and the way they handled their business about that matchup gives me hope they'll probably do about the same thing going out to Boulder, and the way they go out there a little bit early, get themselves acclimated, get themselves focused, ready to go win a football game in week 1.
That's a really good call. Georgia Tech handling their business last year against FSU. ACC schedule, Chad, you look at it pretty favorable, right? They do have to play Clemson at home, but no SMU, no Miami, no Louisville. All those teams pretty much thought of to be those teams maybe under Clemson along with Georgia Tech. So, when you look at the schedule, it's definitely right there for Georgia Tech, right? Everything they could want trying to get to Charlotte.
It's really interesting because when you look at the ACC, the scheduling is a huge component because, like you said, Georgia Tech doesn't have to play Miami, Louisville, SMU, Florida State. They get Syracuse. Yeah, they got to go to Duke. Yeah, they play NC State. But again, after Clemson, to your point, it's going to be a pretty wide open race in the ACC, at least in my opinion. So from Georgia Tech's standpoint, it definitely lines up well. But again, they have to prove it to me. They have to go out and win some of these toss-up games, some of these games that they maybe dropped in the past couple of years. They have to go on a pretty substantial winning streak in September and October to put themselves in position to make that ACC title game. But again, on paper, it looks like they have a really, really good shot this year to do some damage against some teams who maybe aren't expected to be at the top of half of the ACC standings.
Chad, before I let you go, my friend, need a prediction. What are your thoughts for Georgia Tech? The win total right now is about 8 wins for the Yellow Jackets. Odds makers seeing about an 8-4 season. Some nice odds for them to make the ACC title game is plus 650. For them to win the ACC is 12-1. What would be your prediction on Georgia Tech this year?
I actually love the record 8-4, and I think that'd probably be disappointing for most Georgia Tech fans to hear me say. But again, until they can prove they can go out and win consistently and win some of those games in the middle of the schedule, you look at Clemson, they'll be an underdog. You look at Georgia, they'll be an underdog, and so there'll probably be a couple more games in there that are going to be really tough for them. Like I said, at Boston College in November, on the road at Duke. So I think this team has a ton of talent and a ton of potential. I wouldn't be surprised if they went 10-2, but again, until they can prove it to me, I kind of like that 8-4 mark for this Georgia Tech team.
Very good. Chad Bishop, give him a follow on X at Mr. Chad Bishop, Georgia Tech beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Kind enough to join us here on Send It In. Chad, great meeting you, man. Appreciate the time. Enjoy the season. Hope to talk again soon.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.